Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Funkovi here on behalf of MMOBomb.com, and welcome back to another First Impressions. Today we're taking a very early look at Albion Online, which is a sandbox MMORPG, cross-platform, being developed by none other than Sandbox Interactive. Go figure. So Albion Online, it's in alpha right now. There's been a couple of different alpha development periods where people have gotten into the game. This is the second one that I've personally been in, although the first one was pretty rough. So every time the alpha comes back around, there's always a lot of changes. So of course, between the time that you guys see this and when the game actually launches as a free-to-play MMO, there will probably be a lot of other changes. So just keep that in mind. What you see here is probably not the final. In fact, I do know that Sandbox Interactive does listen to the community a lot, and every time they have an alpha test, they take a lot of information from that and make changes based on that. So between this and the next alpha test or the closed beta, I expect to see some changes. But you can kind of see the general gameplay here of how Albion works and sort of some of the major key points of the game. So first thing there, you notice I jumped in on my character immediately. I didn't kind of go through any character creation screen. That's because in the current alpha, you can only have one character available to you at a time. You have to delete them otherwise. And I have too many good things on this character to delete them just right now. I was gifted a mount, which early on you do not get a mount. You kind of just have to walk everywhere. And I do not want to lose that mount, so I will not be deleting my character to show you that. That being said, the character creation is fairly simple, if you will. You merely get options of changing like your skin color, your hair color, some different hairstyles. You can also be male and female, of course. There's a female character right here, as you can see. And outside of that, you can choose this sort of starting icon, which is your avatar. That kind of denotes how your facial features work. If you're a male, you can do things like beards and what have you. But otherwise, I don't think there's like a beard option for female. So pretty much you just get these little avatars up here that you can change. My guy has a black beard. So the only guy that has a black beard in these avatars is this bald-headed dude. So that's why I like to think that I'm wearing a cap because he's a little bit, you know, Rogaine hasn't been created at this point. He's a little bit paranoid about that. So I'm in here in one of the main towns. I've already gone ahead and crafted a couple of the early sort of tiered weapons and items. If I hit I here, you can notice these things here. These are all crafted. Albion Online is a sandbox MMO, so with any sandbox MMO, there's a pretty steep learning curve, or at least progression curve in terms of how long it'll take you before you can start doing the quote-unquote fun stuff. In Albion, since it is a crafting-focused MMO, something like Arcade or even RuneScape to compare it to something else, it means that everything in the game is crafted and everything is traded or it's collaborated on with you and guildmates or just other players, etc. That also means that there's personal housing that's non-instance. And there's also, of course, guild housing and even player-owned cities. If we bring up with the map here, I'm in King's Market right now. But we go up here, I believe this area here, Taylor's Haven, rather. This is a player-owned city. There's also a player-owned region, so you'll notice certain guilds own these regions here. And whenever a guild or a region is attacking each other, you can kind of see the ongoing fights and sort of where players are trying to conquer a new area. By conquering these areas, they gain access to these plots they can place down buildings for, and of course, like establish themselves out into the different areas. And PvP is really the main focus, at least right now, for Albion Online in the current alpha state. It's really cool to have these player-owned towns too, because with the player-owned towns, everything in the town has to be built up. So any of these regions, it starts as like a flat piece of land essentially, and you build up the town. You add those buildings, and it suddenly becomes this bustling quote-unquote place where players can go and use the resources, and attacks can be levied upon those players by the local guilds. And that creates the sort of income variety there. So there is some interesting aspects and sort of design and development focuses there that makes the game much more emergent in the same way as something like Evil 9 or other sandbox MMOs. That being said, there are some qualms I have with the game, so we'll talk about those once we get into it. Alright, so being in this main town here, I've already crafted a pretty good set of tier 2 armor. The crafting system is tiered, so you start off with the basics, and then those basic items allow you to reach the next tier, and the next tier, and the next tier. Unfortunately, there isn't really cross tiers right now, so you don't, say, use a lot of tier 1 items with tier 2 and tier 3, making tier 1 items even useful for late game characters. It kind of just stacks on top of each other right now. So tier 1 is always going to be worse than tier 2, tier 3 is always going to be better than tier 2, etc., and so on. But that is your main way of progressing through this, what's called the Destiny board here, which at first glance may look at something from like Path of Exile, but in reality it's just a way to track your character's progress. So with something like Albion Online, there are no classes per se. Everybody starts as a blank slate, and their different characteristics and how they play is all tied to the gear that they're wearing. There are no abilities that your character learns. It's all learned through the gear. So imagine putting on like a magical plate helm and suddenly knowing how to cast fireballs or something like that. That's how that works in this game. So if we were looking at something like the Novice Broad Shield, the resources required are 16 of these iron ingots. And then if we go to spells, I'm able to choose before I craft it what exactly I get. So Sunder Armor, Hamstring, I also have Taunt available to me, Defensive Stance, and a Dash. And these are the same for both the starter sort of abilities there at the top. And on the bottom, you get a passive ability, which is like each auto attack increases your physical armor by 50 for 2 seconds. Each auto attack restores 14 energy, increases your auto attack damage. So you get a lot of options there for sort of choosing whether or not to go a tanky route or a DPS route. From what I've seen during the alpha, most players who go for the board and sword kind of build, they're typically going the tanky route. I haven't seen too many people go DPS route that way. And that's because plate armor has some of the best physical resistance, but not so much the best magical resistance. So this is the magic vendor here, the Journeyman's Mage Tower. These towers themselves can also be upgraded, especially if you're a player who's plopped one down. It'll start out as only having access to like tier 2 items, and the more you upgrade it, the more tiers unlock and you can gain access to those. So right now this one has it tiers 2 and 3, but I think there's already like tiers 4 and 5 available later on in the game. And again, this has access to the Annihilation Staff or the Tome of Spells, while they also have access to just cloth armor. So I'm wearing both cloth, leather, and plate armor, which I don't know if that's optimal, but I'm doing it anyways because why not? You can in this game. That's sort of a luxury. And you're able to tie abilities to both your weapons and your core armor pieces. Your actual boots here, they have access to one spell, which is generally something like a movement spell. So this one here increases my movement speed by 50% for 7 seconds, good for traveling and gathering, and then increases my movement speed innately, just passively, by 1.5 seconds there. Alright, so I kind of want to upgrade to cloth shoes, so I'll go with 2 pieces of cloth and a plate helm. For my cloth shoes here, I can choose to sprint, increases my movement speed for 100%, run, dash to a target enemy, increases movement speed by 80% and CC resistance by 133, but you can't cast spells. I kind of want to go for just the typical sprint there, and then we'll go for some more cooldown reduction. So crafting anything like cloth, if you're a very ability based build where you're not using a lot of auto attacks to get in your damage, having a lot of cooldown reduction is very useful, and that's why of course building more of a traditional mage with full cooldown reduction would make you just like a glass cannon. If you look here, I've got Firebolt, Fireball, which are bound to my staff. The Shield Wall is bound to my shield, of course. Frost Nova, I think, is my chest, which allows me to slow everybody around me. The Desperate Prayer is bound to my helm, which is more of my tank survivability. And then I've got the movement speed bound to my feet. Alright. I'm going to hit A and bring open my mount. The gameplay itself is a little bit more of your standard tab target MMO. If you played RuneScape or Eldiven Online, it's very much like you click, you move there, you cast your spells, either hitting the buttons or hitting the actual skill keys themselves, or the keys themselves. So in that respect, it's fairly straightforward. How you actually progress in the game through the use of the Destiny board here is by crafting or by gathering certain items that allow you to craft. So as you progress through these tiers here, I've already made it to Journeyman's Gatherer. There's Gatherer, there's Crafting, and there's Combat. And to progress to the next tier, I have to gather any tier 3 resources worth 200 fame. So the more I gather the next tier, the more I'll progress in this gathering node or this tree here. And at certain intervals, I'll get achievements and sometimes get access to new rewards. So this one gives me access to Adept's Mage Tower items craftable, which I would like for them to kind of explain this a little bit more. Right now, the Destiny board is really hard to understand just what I'm working towards if you haven't already played the game or messed around with the systems. Like Adept Hunter's lodge items craftable. Oh, I also saw there was lodge items craftable in the town for the archer and what have you. Does that mean that I'm able to craft those items out in the wild without the need for the central place? Those things aren't really explained in the current game. Alright, so I've moved on to a major, or just a zone, if you will, this Westford area here. Each zone is broken up into these square quadrants, and I would like to get a little bit more diversity in terms of not having everything just broken up into these square-like edges, but having more rounded edges and whatnot. As I move through here, these are all gatherable, and they are broken up into different tiers. Really, the early part of the game is predominantly based around or focused on gathering resources here so you can craft whatever tiered items you want to craft. Right here I have tier 2 across the board. I've got some leather, some cloth, the iron ingots, and then the wood. So pretty much anything that I needed to build on the tier 2 side of things is done. I have a complete set of tier 2. I'm good to go here, and I wouldn't need to actually craft anything more to gain whatever set I'm building at that point. But this game is about progression. It's about going to the next tier. So if I wanted to actually, say, chop down this tree here, I would have to equip my axe and then come over here, and as you'll see, there is up to 16 wood available, and every time I cut down a piece of wood, I gain a piece of fame. That goes for anything: killing an enemy, crafting an item, cutting down a tree, skinning anything in this game that is a progression point gives you that fame, which is how you track your overall character's progression. So right here, I'll just switch back here, and you may be wondering, well, does it just automatically switch you between your active, combat abilities and gathering? Currently, no. And this is very tedious. And what that means is, like, I can come over here and be like, oh, I have to equip the beginner's axe. All right, I have to come in here, equip the axe. All right, now I can hop down this tree. But there is, as you'll notice here, the ability to equip best available weapon and next tool. So you can cycle through the tools. I would rather it be something where it just automatically equips the tool necessary. And now suddenly I'm not equipped with anything. But you can, if you have the, say, sickle here, if I hit Q, it will swap me to my 2 available or best, quote-unquote, weapons there. Kill this fox here. Foxes have about 813 health HP. They don't do too much damage to you. They're primarily just simply something that you use for crafting here. And the combat, as you'll notice here, I'm just hitting sort of some of my abilities and easily killing him, essentially. But that's a fox. It's not really something that it's meant to be an issue there. If I wanted to, though, I can come over, and it's really low. I'm about to lose it. Resources depleted. Dang it. Looks like I can't, for some reason, skin him. Usually you'll be able to skin anything, starting with like the bunnies to the foxes. The foxes are tier 2, bunnies are tier 1. Anything that's tier 1, even if you, say, die and you lose all your items, because there is permanent loss of items in this game. I can even lose my mount if I die. If you die and lose your items, you go start back at tier 1 if you don't have anything. So it's always good to build up extra sets of tier items, either crafting items as well as combat items. That way, if you do happen to die, you're always able to have sort of like a starting point to go back to. Alright, so I kind of want to move on to tier 3. Now, unfortunately, my sickle there and a couple other items are about to break, and I can repair them. But right now it requires you to use resources that you've gathered, and it doesn't really have a gold system. There is a two-tier gold system here. The silver coins are used for things like paying for rent on housing property, as well as you just get that off of enemies you've killed. It's used to purchase things, of course, from not the cash shop, but the auction house where players can place things up. And then this currency was actually gifted to me. I think it's the cash shop currency, but I could be mistaken. There may be a way to gain the gold in-game. There's a player that most likely died and lost all of his items. With the permanent death system in the game, essentially when you die in a safe zone, which is a zone that doesn't have PvP, you get 10 minutes to go back there, get the items, and then once you get those items back, you should retain most of your gear. Sometimes there is like this trash or breakage, a random chance where you'll lose some of your items, which I'm not really sure I agree with, because I think the game's already punishing enough than the fact that you lose everything when you die. You literally lose everything. It's not even like RuneScape where you would, I think, gain... It's been a long time since I played RuneScape, but I think you like retain the best 2 items last time I played whenever you would die. So things like that. This is very much a hardcore game in that sense. So I'm moving through an area that's predominantly just built with player housing here. all these little zones, all these little nodes here replaced by players. And if something's for sale, you'll notice it has a little sign. We can click on it, and you can see, all right, I can buy this land here for 357 every 24 hours. That's quite expensive to buy. Sell price is 100,000. Am I able to buy this with gold? No, I don't want to pay silver. Can I pay with gold? I cannot pay with gold. So this is only, am I only able to buy this what am I saying? Resource resale. What's the, I'm looking for real estate. There we go. I can only buy this real estate here if I have silver. It doesn't look like I can buy it with gold, unfortunately. I think I can rent though for gold. So I am able to rent out a place. But if I want to buy it permanently, it looks like I have to get in-game currency. And 100,000 is quite a lot. I mean, I have 32 right now, and I haven't been playing for that long, but I can certainly see, unless there's some sort of, unless you get a lot of resource, I would imagine a lot of silver rather from just selling items, which I imagine is a good way for players to make quite a deal of money in this game. It certainly seems like it would take a while to get enough to actually buy out a location. Alright, so I've been talking for quite a while here, and unfortunately there hasn't been a lot of combat happening. That's mainly for the fact that in these early areas, again, the game is very much focused on the crafting side of things, so going to these nodes, going to anything like that, I can pick these up, and again, to do that I would drop down the hammer, and I can't do it as well as mounted. I have to unmount, and then gain access to that iron node. And these iron nodes can be smelted down, changed into the bars, which I can then use the bars, of course, to build any kind of armor or weaponry that's, you know, steel based. Later on in the game you can build some pretty fancy looking halberds and other maces as well. I think they're going to be adding more weaponry and more weapon types later on in the game. So if we look here on the map though, I think I can zoom in. Right here in the middle, that's somewhat of a dungeon. So there's typically some enemies over there. We can show off a little bit more of the combat. Because this game is cross-platform, it does utilize sort of just like typical tab targeting like I mentioned before. And you got to think about that in the respect of, this is very PvP focused. Ooh, what are these? These are gems? Need Journeyman's Gem Hammer, so I need to craft a gem hammer. I can't get this iron ore though. So gems are used for certain types of gears, or they're necessary for that later on, higher tiers. This is also a higher tiered coarse wood, tier 3 here. So if I wanted to build a better staff, I would use some coarse wood. So again, using this sort of gets me accrued as a adept lumberjack here, because this is a tier 3 item. Anything as I begin to gather and craft tier 3 will contribute towards those next achievement points, or those next fame levels, essentially. Just kind of denoting what your character is capable of. And it's sort of like a passive sort of progression system, whereby you don't necessarily gain access to something like innately. You don't gain access to an ability or something like that. You just gain access to the next tier, or a new line of items. I would hope that there was the ability to craft sort of like more specifically tailored items, not just simply items that have different abilities attached to them, but maybe stats, or just having the ability to tweak them so that everybody can have their specialized tier. Like let's say you get up to tier 5, and that tier 5 you can specialize into 3 or 4 different subsets of tier 5 plate armor. Having that specialization, having the ability to sort of finally, you know, define how your character crafts or how they fight, that all is very good. And essentially you already have the diversity with the abilities, with, you know, having the different abilities tied to the weaponry. But unfortunately everybody can just build that, and everybody has to build that because that's how everybody progresses in the game. You can't just jump in. I mean, you could, and someone could just give you all the armor, I think. But the way the progression system works for normal players is everybody's going to have access to the same things at the same time as they level up, or as they progress. There's no leveling system, which kind of makes just it come down to convenience. Is it convenient for you to craft these things and get them yourself? Or is it just more convenient to go buy those items? Alright, so coming off my mount here, you have this sort of pretty ridiculous cooldown here for abilities. I can sort of maybe understand just having that cooldown built in so that you don't just run up on someone with your abilities and just gank them out of nowhere, but it kind of seems like it's a little bit too long, unfortunately. Alright, so let's try my best here. Oh, got some shield walls going here. Desperate Prayer is going to Frost Nova. Luckily, I have someone here helping me, but I am getting low. Oh, there's a guy right here. I couldn't even see him. This is somewhat of the camera angle issues. My shield wall is back up. I will use my Frost Nova. Oh, he's so low. You can kind of see how I'm doing. Come on, he's 4. Okay. I live. This guy here, he's got a lot of tankiness to him. He's kind of like a... It's built to be a tank and spank there. Pick up some silver. Got quite a lot of silver from this area, actually. And looks like there are some mark of destructions here used to craft specialized items. Close one, indeed, sir. That was very close. Got a little bit of a heal there, not too much. I've got quite a lot of damage going here. But I gotta kind of use tunes here as a... I should totally invite this guy to my guild. Do you want to come with my guild, man? Invite. Come to MMO Bombs Guild. With the whole guild system, too, you can also sort of leave a message for players who are looking at the guilds. I'll show the guild systems after we move out of combat here. But there are dungeons. This is an area where, as you can see, there's this dungeons of sorts down there. I became a journeyman fighter, mastery level 1. Awesome. Hello, guild. I didn't add him to the guild. Okay, he's just saying hello, guild. So there's this dungeon right down there. Hopefully we can go in here. I kind of want to ping to them. I wish there was a way where you could add them to groups. It doesn't seem like there's an easy way that I found to add people into groups. Or at least I don't even know if there's even a group system, if you will. Though I'm doing work to this guy here. Luckily I have a tank, so it takes most of the damage there. And none of this is split, so none of us got the, you know, if he loots something and I don't loot it, we can't leave combat. Come on. Who are we in combat with? Did he get in? Ah, I got in now. Alright. So we'll go into this temple here. See what we can find. So this is the other part of the game. If you're not crafting to make your better gear, you are going in here. And there's actual ability cooldowns even when you zone in, which is really weird. Like maybe they wanted that so that you couldn't just zone in and out and pick at people. You had to sort of like commit to staying in the zone. Otherwise, when you would zone to the next area, you just wouldn't have access to your abilities. I don't know. This seems a little bit janky, at least from a single player perspective. Just kind of like the whole like having to switch manually between the items and then having your abilities. It kind of seems like everything makes your abilities go on cooldown, not just like, I mean, dismounting makes your abilities go on cooldown. Dismounting also makes you slower for a period of time. These are tier 4, so we're doing things. I gotta use the shield. There, slow that guy down. Help me, buddy. Get this guy off of me. I'm only a tier 2 right now. Alright, let's get there. There we go. I probably could have just like sat there and tanked it, but this guy obviously has he's 1462 health versus my 1229. Again, he also has some plate on. So there are those things. I've actually never been in an area looking like this, so I don't really know what's inside. I do believe that usually there's like an in boss that you can face. And sometimes I think they drop loot besides just having... Where do they go? I feel really... I can't mount up in this area, unfortunately. I feel very scared now. Okay, there he is. Whoa. Found him. So the combat has been... It's not action-based by any means, I would say. Although I would say that you can cast abilities fairly quickly. There's a fairly low cooldowns, at least when I'm going for this mage build here. With the cooldown reduction built into 2 of my pieces of armor. But it's spammy in that sense, and that also comes into play, of course, through the PvPs, because you can build your characters as supportive characters. It doesn't just have to be... Let's go ahead and stun him there, slow him down. You don't have to be someone built for damage. You can completely have nothing but tank, or completely have nothing but support, and use that to heal your allies in guild PvP battles over castles and sieges. So definitely there's certainly... Oh, I totally lost the guy I was hanging out with. That is just some random dude. Again, a party system would be very useful, or at least I invited him, but I don't know if that was an invitation to a party or an invitation to the guild, because I'm the guild leader. Sounds like there's... Ooh, there he is. I found you again, man. Sorry, I'm here. Now I can actually hover over him, and nope, looks like I'm only desperate prayer myself. Some of the abilities, I think, heal nearby characters as well. So you're not just limited to go and pick up... Man, I'm getting a lot of silver now. So maybe never mind about the whole like only being able to get enough silver through non-PvE means. I'm starting to ramp up the silver. Dungeons do seem to give a lot more silver than just your straight typical outdoor minions. They're also a lot harder too. The tiers are definitely a lot larger. So generally speaking, you probably want to go in here with a group of players. And this is also, again, in just the safe zones. This isn't the main PvP zones. There's some zones where it's like unlawful to PvP, but at the same time you can. And then there's straight zones where it's just like free for all. You can do whatever you want. Oh man, there's a lot of guys here. Let's back up here just a little bit. I do worry that it can be hard to, because the enemies move pretty fast. I do worry that kiting really isn't going to be something you can do in this game, at least in a PvE perspective. And again, maybe people will argue that this game is built around PvP, of course, and so you should think in the terms of PvP. But if you're going to have PvE being the main way for players to progress outside of getting to the PvP, then they could do with some little bit, you know, just different mechanics at play here. It's tank and spank in the sort of most general sense of the word, in that you kind of sit here, you kill the enemies there. If you have a tank, great, they can sit there in the front. But if I'm just by myself, really speaking, they're going to catch up with me pretty quickly. So I would like to see some changes made there. That being said, even though I'm only like tier 2 in my armor and stuff, I'm doing quite well with damage. So even if you're not capable, even if you get into some of the PvP zones later on, there we go, and you only have tier 2 and everybody has like tier 3 or 4, you're still probably able to do a moderate amount of damage there. And you can always be a support as well. So I feel like even in PvP, with a few tier differences, you should still be able to make a difference there. If damage numbers against, you know, NPCs in PvE are anything to go by. Alright, so pretty much just coming in here, this Morgana Footman is just ripping me a new one. There you go. Definitely helps to have multiple players here. And this dungeon is fairly large. It's about the size of an entire zone. But what I have been reading on the forums in regards to what people have been saying about late game, you know, in guild games, etc., is that the guild territories for guild PvP are a little bit too small. They feel like they could be larger in order to facilitate better gameplay. So that is something to consider as needing adjustments. I myself, I probably won't get to the guild PvP area because it's such tedium in some ways to get to that. And some people are going to be okay with that, of course. I'm getting freaking owned here. Help me, guys. Don't let me lose my armor. Desperate prayer. Come on. You know, let this guy just, like, rip me a new one? Get this guy off of me. They want me to die so that they can get my gear. They don't want me to live. They don't want to pick up what I have on me. What a-holes. I mean, you gotta imagine, these people aren't here always to help. If you die and you're not able to get back to your gear in time, that's 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes to get back. If you can't get it back there in time, or back in the dungeon, mind you have to also move past enemies while doing so. It's like a corpse run. Then they can just scoop up the loot. So it definitely is not just, I mean, you want everybody to help each other, but at the same time, you don't want to be the person that dies, because then everybody else is just going to go for your gear. Alright, well, I'll see if we can progress past here and maybe find a boss before we end this first look. So PvP, of course, is a thing. Outside of the guild PvP and the open world PvP, there isn't really like dungeons, or sorry, battlegrounds rather, for you to do. And mainly that's because of the fact that you lose your armor in PvP just like you do in PvE. This guy is all on me. I must be doing some crazy DPS for doing some really high damage. Put my shield up. I'm glad I didn't go straight for just damage. I would already be dead. Doing some work to that guy. And as you see, continually gaining fame along the way, while also killing creatures worth 800 fame. Not really sure how that translates to that. I can see that I need 800 worth of fame from killing creatures. But it just kind of seems like a run-on sentence. Kill creatures worth 800 fame. So they need to make this a little bit easier. You can also filter these so you don't actually have to see any of that down there if you want less of a clutter. But I can't imagine, especially when you're playing on smaller screens. I'm playing at 1920 by 1080, and there's not that many graphical settings other than like high, low, or medium. I can imagine playing on something like a phone or a tablet being a lot more scrunched up on the screen, and I'm not really sure how that works out in terms of balance for PvP in general, because I have heard that things like melee characters in PvP right now are just innately unbalanced. They're not very strong versus like everybody who's ranged because of how combat in this game works. So it just makes it easy. I mean, when a melee character runs up on everybody, you know, it just kind of makes them a quick focus, whereby if everybody's just flinging fireballs from afar, it makes it harder to have like a direct sort of line of sight on who you're supposed to be attacking. Whereas, hey, this guy is in melee range. Clearly, we need to be attacking him because he's right up in our face. So we're making some good progress through this dungeon. One thing I'm really sort of worried about is the fact that... Did we already progress through this area? I guess we did. Oh, whoa! There's a big group of guys over there. So yeah, this dungeon's fairly large. A lot larger than some of the smaller areas that I've been to. I think this is like one of the more themed ones available. Because some of the other dungeons I saw were just... They had like little monsters in them, and they were lower tiers too, so I'm not quite sure. Alright, but I pretty much... Let's go ahead and come back here just a bit. I'll show off the guild interface real quick. So here I am, the guild master. There's also the alliance. You can create alliances with other guilds. I gotta make sure I don't die. Let's see if I can... Yeah, there. I can still use my abilities. You can create alliances with other guilds, which is useful for PvP purposes if you're trying to take over a larger, you know, like structure or a larger castle or player town, if you will, that's owned by a larger guild. You can form up with this alliance. And then, of course, if you're the guild member or the guild leader, you can create this system whereby you can explain who you're looking for. So I'm looking for English-speaking players, normal play style, not beginner or expert, just normal. And then you can join us for an explosive time. We've got free drinks in Carpal Tunnel. Punch and pie will be served daily. Signed, your glorious leader, Spunkify. Oh, I was hoping to find an actual boss fight, but it looks like we're just finding somewhat of a... This definitely looks something like a group dungeon, if you will. And even though you're not grouping up as a straightforward group, like there's no, you know, we don't have a party system set up or anything like that. I do think there is a party system in the game, though. Sun slowed them down a little. I have been stunned by something. Like burnt and stunned at the same time. Put that shield wall up. Deflect a little of that damage. Because if we go here to the general area, you're able to swap between Alliance, Guild, Emote, Whisper. I guess there is no party. Just local and Alliance and Guild. So yeah, having party interface would probably be nice. Just because I don't see a lot of people talking in say or /s in these areas. Let's see if we can help this guy. I'm really interested to see like how I got slept. There's a cleanse ability. Come on. There we go. We got him. There is a cleanse ability, but I didn't take it, so you would be able to cleanse all those debuffs that occurred. It looks like we kind of just cleared out this area here. Alright, but yeah, that's going to go ahead and be my first look here for Albion Online. This is, generally speaking, something that you're going to do outside of course, crafting your different tiered weapons and items. I would love to show you the higher tier items, but I don't think you guys want to see me just running around harvesting. That's pretty much the most boring portion of the gameplay found here in Albion in the current alpha version. But if you guys want to learn more about the game, go ahead and check down below at mmobomb.com for the full game profile. Like I said, it's in early alpha here, so things are subject to change, and if you want to play it right now, I think the only way you can get in is either through a Founders Pack or if you're lucky enough to snag a alpha key. So yeah, probably gonna have to wait a while, mainly for everybody to play the game. But until then, just you can watch this video and you can understand how it generally works. And if there's more gameplay to be added in the future, we may do a beta first look, of course, before the final first look once the game goes live. But I'm gonna get out of this dungeon here. I don't like being inside. They will spawn around me again if I come back into the game later. And there is no teleport option, or a kind of get out of jail free card, if you will. So I'm kind of stuck here. And now I'm in a spot where they're already over there, so I gotta use my increased movement speed here. Actually, I just mount up. My mount actually has its own HP bar, and besides, this is a tier 3 mount, so it also moves a lot faster than what you would normally. You actually have to craft your mounts, normally speaking. Holy crap. I'm not taking any damage, I think, because I have this shield. Oh, man, they're so fast. They're so fast, guys. Well, until next time, I hope you enjoyed this first look. If you want to learn more, just let me know. Until then, I'll see you later. Smokify out. Oh, I'm out of there. Later, guys.